In this video, we're going to discuss ratios. So a ratio is a comparison of two different things, and there are three different ways to write a ratio. So you can write a ratio with a fraction, a colon, which is those double dots, or you can use the word to. And you can include either part-to-part ratios of the same set, part-to-part different set ratios, part-to-whole ratios, or whole-to-whole ratios. And we'll go over what did those specifically mean on our next page. But for right now, we're going to talk about the three different ways that you can write a ratio. So you can write a ratio as a fraction. So you can see that the whole, or the pieces that the second piece that you're talking about is on the bottom, and the parts are on the top. Make sure that your fraction is always simplified. You always want to simplify with your ratios. So for the problem that we're going to do over to the side, it says, what is the ratio of shaded stars to all the stars? So I'm going to get out my highlighter, and I'm going to highlight what they're looking for. Shaded stars to all the stars. And I want you to do the same. So if you need to borrow a highlighter, make sure you get one out or use a colored pencil and shade it in. We're going to do a lot of highlighting with this lesson. So if we look at how many shaded stars there are 5 shaded stars. So I'm just going to document that there's 5 shaded stars. And if I count how many stars there are, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 stars. So because it said shaded stars to total stars, I'm comparing, there's this total here. So I'm taking the shaded, which is part, compared to all of the stars, which is the whole. So this is a part to whole relationship. And if I write this as a fraction, shaded stars would be 5 to the total stars, which is 10. And we always have to simplify. So these end in 5 and 0, so that means I can divide by 5. And I'm left with 1/2 as my ratio. The next way that you can write a ratio is with the with a colon. So you fill in colon here, and that's the double dots. So we write the ratio as a simplified fraction. The numerator goes to the left of the colon, and the denominator goes to the right of the colon. So if I have the fraction 3/5, it's like I just tip this over. And 3 colon 5 is like the fraction 3/5. So it says, what is the ratio? So if we look at the ratio of triangles to hearts, which is our problem over here, we have 4 triangles and we have 3 hearts. And you can see that triangles are part of this set and hearts are part of the set. So this is a part to part same set because they're in the same group ratio. So if we write it as a fraction, we have 4/3. We're going to leave it in proper. It's okay. In ratio land, we can leave them in proper. And then we're going to turn it on its side, so it's 4 colon 3. The last way to write a ratio is with the word to. So with the word to. And same thing as with the colon, you can write it, you just take the fraction and you tip it over. So the first item goes before the word to and the second item goes after the word to. It's always important for ratios that the order is important. So there are 18 footballs and 10 basketballs in a ball bin. What is the ratio of basketballs to all of the balls? So I'm going to get out that highlighter again. And I want to highlight, and I should have done this in the last problem, I didn't think about it. I want to highlight what they're looking for. They're looking for basketballs to all of the balls. That's what they're looking for. So in our final answer, we should be comparing basketballs to all the balls. Basketballs, there's 10. And they're saying basketballs first. A lot of people will put footballs first because they read the problem and they don't read what the question's looking for. The total balls in the ball bin is going to be taking the footballs and the basketballs and putting them together. So I'm going to take 18 plus 10, and that gives me 28 total that are in the ball bin. And I need a fraction ratio, so I'm doing basketballs to all of the balls. So 10 to 28, I can simplify that. They're both even. So I can divide it by 2. And I get 5. And if I divide 28 by 2, I get 14. So it's 5 to 14. And then if I write it with words, it is 5 to 14. And if I'm looking at this one, I can see what kind of relationship this is. So basketballs is part of this. And then all of the balls is the whole relationship. So this is a part to whole relationship. Okay, so let's look at the next page and talk a little bit more about those part to part and part to whole relationships. So the first part of this talks about just what are ratios, the 3 ways to write them. So we know it's a fraction, a colon, and the word to. They're a comparison between 2 things. And order is super duper duper important. And we're always going to say make sure you always simplify them. So if we talk about a part to whole comparison, we have this set of right here of basketballs and of baseballs. And it says how many basketballs are in the entire set. Well, how many basketballs are there? Well, there's 2 basketballs to the entire set. So a ratio can compare part of the set to an entire set. So this is a part to whole. So it's basketballs to all of the balls. And basketballs is 2 to all of them, which is 5. And that does not simplify, so the ratio for this one would just be 2/5. If we continue with that, so this is a part-to-part comparison in the next one we're going to talk about. So we have part-to-part same set and part-to-part different set. If we do part-to-part same set, it says how many basketballs are compared to baseballs. So because they're in the same group, we're comparing basketballs to baseballs. There are 3 basketballs to 2 baseballs. This is same set because they're in the same group. So if you need to, you can write this is the same group. Whereas this one, this different set, they're in 2 different groups. So we're taking the basketballs from set 1 versus the basketballs in set 2. So this is basketballs in set 1. And then set 2 basketballs. So set 1, there's 4 of them, and then set 2, there's 2 of them. We can simplify that. They're both even, so we can divide by 2, and we're left with 2 over 1. And we're going to leave the ratio over 1 since it's a ratio and not just a fraction that we're simplifying. The last one that we're going to talk about is a whole-to-whole relationship. So it says how many footballs are compared to oranges. These are 2 different groups. So I'm comparing the footballs to the oranges. So there are 5 footballs to 5 oranges. And I can divide that by 5, which would give me a 1-to-1 relationship for that one. All right, if we continue on to the next page, this is our last page that we're going to go over. Mr. Bartell has 16 girls and 8 boys in his second block class. What is the ratio of boys to girls? And be sure to write it all 3 ways to show the ratio. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight what is important that I'm looking at. I am looking for the ratio of boys to girls. Don't get tripped up because a lot of people look at the front part of the problem and they say, oh, well, girls must be first because girls are written first in the sentence. That's not true. We're looking for the ratio of boys to girls. So we're going to take this fraction of boys to girls and we have to look, well, how many boys are there? There are 8 boys. to 16 girls. Now, we always need to simplify this. So we can simplify this actually by 8, and we can get 1/2 as our fraction. And then we can take our fraction and write it with a colon. So my colon would be 1:2. And I can also write 1, 2, 2. Now, if I were to think of what kind of set this is this part-to-part same set, part-to-part different set, part to whole, or whole to whole? Well, because it's comparing boys to girls and they're all in the same class, this is part to part same set. Okay? Okay, so we have 6 problems to complete, and I'm going to do 2 of them with you, and then I'm going to have you do the other 4 on your own. So if we look at number 1, if I have 11 apples and 9 oranges in a fruit basket, what is the ratio of apples to oranges? Always highlight, I am looking for the ratio of apples to oranges. So I'm just going to highlight apples to oranges. And you can write that. It might be helpful. Apples to oranges. To put it in order, there are 11 apples and 9 oranges. That doesn't simplify, but we need to write it all 3 ways. So there's our fraction, here's our colon, and here's our word to. If we say what kind of relationship this is it, excuse me, is it part to part same set, part to part different set, part to whole, or whole to whole? Well, they're in the same set, and it's apples to oranges. They're both parts of the set. So this is part to part same set. Okay, the next problem, there are 4 cubes and 10 pyramids in a box of blocks. What is the ratio of pyramids to cubes? So we're going to highlight, we want the ratio of pyramids to cubes. So we're doing pyramids to cubes. There are 10 pyramids to 4 cubes. Now those are both even, so we can divide that by 2, and we get 5/2. So there's our fraction. Our colon is 5:2, and with the words, it's 5, 2, 2. And if we think to ourselves, is it part to part same set, part to part different set, part to whole, or whole to whole? Well, they're all in the same box, and they're different kinds of blocks. So this is part to part same set. Okay, so what I want you to do now is I want you to pause the video, and I want you to do 3, 4, 5, and 6 on your own. And here are your answers for 3, 4, 5, and 6. Remember, in number 3, you're looking for the ratio of zebras to all the animals at the zoo. So there's 7 zebras to 21 total animals. You can simplify that and you get 1/3. And that is a part to whole relationship, because it's part, which is the zebras, to the whole, which is all. For number 4, it's asking for the ratio of all the students in the classroom to girls. So all the students in the classroom to girls, that would be a part to whole relationship. And because you're comparing all to the girls, you can simplify by 2. For the next one, you're doing the ratio of Blu-ray to DVDs. So we're comparing Blu-rays to regular DVDs. That's 33 to 21. This one's tricky. It can simplify by 3. And this is a part-to-part same-set relationship. And then the last one, it wanted the ratio of aces to the total number of cards. So that's a part-to-whole relationship. There's 4 aces and there's 52 total cards. That divides by 4, and so I get down to 1 to 13. Remember, if you have any questions, go see your teacher for your help.